Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen, welcome back to Sunday morning in the old cookbook show. Today we're going to do a recipe called Gold Label Peanut Cookies from the Gold Label Baking Powder cookbook. This was sent in by a viewer, thank you very much. There is a soft spot in my heart for these little pamphlets, advertising pamphlets, throwaway advertising pamphlets for baking powders and baking sodas. To me, these represent a giant shift in the way that North Americans baked cakes and cookies and biscuits and all of those sorts of things. A shift away from using yeast and beaten egg whites in order to give lift and loft and airiness to chemical leaveners. Certainly chemical leaveners existed before the mid-1850s, but they weren't trusted by most cooks. They weren't easily accessible by most cooks, pearl ash being the one that is most commonly referred to. They tasted bad, and they weren't really safe to eat. And of the hundreds and hundreds of cookbooks that I have prior to 1850, I can count on one hand the number of recipes that I've been able to find that call for a chemical leavener such as pearl ash. So these little cookbooks are out there in the marketplace, and they're serving a whole bunch of purposes. They're inventing a new class of recipes that use this new product in order to leaven them. So you're showing people a new way to make things that they've already been making for, hundreds of years. They're also sort of assuaging your fears about whether this is safe to eat or safe to use. And then each manufacturer is attacking the other manufacturers, saying that their product is going to kill you and only theirs is safe. It's a very interesting sort of subset of recipes, history, and advertising. I really like it. Now I'm supposed to be using mortar and pestle or food chopper. I'm going to use my food chopper. I think that's fine enough. So I know that every time I talk about pearl ash and chemical leaveners, people let me know that, they read some sort of historical novel. And, the chuck wagon cook goes out to the fire and grabs some ash and makes biscuits. In historical fiction, you see that all the time. But in the actual cookbooks from the time period, it just wasn't done. It just wasn't done. It wasn't used. People didn't trust it. There's no real historical record of that happening. But, why would you let reality get in the way of a good story? I mean, that's human history in a nutshell. So, in the stand mixer, creaming the butter and the sugar together. And then in this bowl, I have flour and our baking powder and salt. And we'll give that a mix. If you're using modern technology, there's a couple of things in this recipe that aren't as important today. It tells you to sift this combination 3 times before putting it into the mixture. And that's sift after measuring. You don't really need to sift anything anymore. If it tells you to sift it after measuring, 2023, not really all that important. Also tells you to beat the egg lightly before putting it into the mixture. Because I'm using a stand mixer, not as important. If I was doing this by hand with a wooden spoon in a bowl, yes, beating up the egg first before adding it to the sugar and butter would definitely be helpful. Next ingredient is 2 tablespoons of milk. Put that in. And then we spoon in the flour mixture. Now, the peanut mixture. And so this is just ground peanuts. Not to the point where it's peanut butter, but it did release a lot of the peanut oil. It's a very interesting mixture. So in that goes. So for the most part, this is just a standard cookie in the way that it's put together and sort of the ingredient list. What I think is going to be really interesting is the way the peanuts were treated. We're not using peanut butter. Most peanut butter cookies today, of course, use peanut butter. And I think this ground peanut is a very interesting, could bring an interesting texture and flavor to the cookies. And last cookie on the tray, and it gets, as with all of them, a half a nut meat in the middle, and into the oven they go. Now, no baking temperature or time given because everybody knows that you bake cookies at 350 degrees for 8 to 12 minutes. No need to put it in the recipe. Hey, Jules.
Hey, Glenn. Hey, friends.
Cooking hints.
Oh, I get a hint before my cookies?
It is better to use milk than water for mixing.
Okay. Why is that?
I don't know.
For cooking generally? I don't know.
It just says cooking generally. And that, you should be very careful regulating your oven heat.
Okay.
So this is Gold Label peanut cookies. Not a peanut butter cookie, but it's a ground peanut. You grind the peanuts up.
Not peanutty cookie. It's really soft and fluffy. Which you
Really?
don't usually get with the peanut butter cookies, right? Because of the... Oh. Works for me.
It's a very good, like, subtle peanut flavor. Like, it's not overpoweringly peanut.
I think you could put a little dollop of jam on top and just, for those of us who like a little PB&J.
Could stand, spilling a little vanilla into the mix because there's no vanilla in it. I don't think it necessarily needs it, but it would be a nice addition.
Maybe. But I do like it.
That's a nice cookie. It's a really simple one. Doesn't make too many. I mean, there's...
Is this all of it? There's a few more, but not like, 50 cookies.
This is half the recipe.
Okay, that's pretty nice then.
The other half is frozen, and like I always do, put them in the freezer, already portioned out, stick them in the oven, frozen, cook them for the same amount of time, and they're fantastic.
All right.
Okay, so an alternative to a peanut butter cookie. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon. How'd you eat your cookie so fast?
I just threw it right in. It was done. Didn't you see? I was like, rah, 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 rah. It was embarrassing. I realized I was talking and